Hi friends, you're watching Faint Signals from Vega. My name's Trish Roberts. So I thought I'd try sitting outside today um, while the weather is fine. It's autumn at the moment, and it tends to be a little bit unpredictable. In the background there you can see a little bit of the Huon River and some smoke in the background, and that's they're doing some burning off. So I wanted to talk about wildlife today, and I put that in quotes. We separate different species depending on how we fetishize them and depending on how we use them, and we consider one group a domesticated group, and the other group is a group that we like to look at, and we're into the appearances of them, and they're animals that we don't eat. So we tend to sort of fetishize animals that we don't eat, and they're the ones that we like to look at. We often sort of claim to care about wildlife, and we wring our hands when there's certain species going extinct, or that they're being trapped or killed or poisoned, and that's because we're afraid that we're not going to be able to look at them anymore. It's got really little to do with them being a nation all on their own, and that they have their own interests in life, and they have interactions with one another, and that they love life and want to live. It has little to do with that. It's to do with us. Once again, it's the human supremacist thing, the our human-centric nature, that we think that everything exists in relation to us. Everything exists for our either enjoyment or our use. That's what's gotten us into this mess that we are at the moment, which is we're on the precipice of extinction ourselves because we've been so careless and so greedy and selfish, and we've been speciesist, and we've managed to we're managing to kill. We're managing to drive extinct 200 species every day due to climate change. And of course, what's the main driver of climate change is animal agriculture. So because we create demand for animal products, we are contributing a huge amount and participating hugely in climate change and the 51% greenhouse gases that are from animal agriculture. So, that's a huge problem. Sorry, it's a little cold. I was watching somebody who was talking about how there's all these different animals, wild animals, being trapped and poisoned in Vermont, and of course it happens all over the United States and all over the world. But they were very upset, and they were wanting to introduce laws, to bring in laws to regulate this kind of thing. Well, firstly, regulation is inherently speciesist. It implies that doing something like killing certain animals or driving other animals out to other areas and all of that is okay because they are inconveniencing us. And they can go from being cherished animals, cherished like wildlife, to then becoming what we would consider pests. It's all dependent on our whims as a species. It's really dependent on how we feel at the time and what we are wanting to do with the land. That's what determines the fate of these non-human animals that we say that we sometimes, we fetish a lot of the time, and then they become pests suddenly. So, and the thing that we don't like to look at, which is something that is it's a common thread with our species, is we never like to look at the fact that we, as individuals, are causing these situations with wild animals. We don't like to look at the fact that we are, because we are eating, wearing, and using animals, because we are creating demand for animal agriculture, we don't like to think that we are that we're the cause of those animals that are being trapped and killed and poisoned and drowned, all those wild animals that are being drowned in traps and all of that. We don't like to consider that we're responsible in any way for that, even when it's pointed out to us. So I was on a thread on a social media site, and there was this woman was talking in a live video, about her upset about these, and she was trying to help change laws to regulate the trapping and poisoning, etc., of these wild animals. That were they were just most of them were being trapped and poisoned, etc., just for fun. Some of it was related to possibly trying to protect something, who knows, but it's always about us in the end. It's like other animals are seen as just inconveniences. If they're just trying to live their life, they're just seen as inconveniences to us. If they're in any way interfering, even just by breathing, some people see animals as interfering with them. I sometimes see the way, this is going off on a sidetrack, but I'm often amazed at how some people seem to be, it's often, I have to say, it's often US citizens seem to be so fearful of insects. I'm not sure what that's about, but it's kind of, it's quite amazing to me. But anyway, going back to this thread with this woman talking about the trapping of animals and how she was trying to change the laws, I often find that compartmentalization of not owning the fact that that we are contributing to all this trapping, etc., due to our consumption of animal products. The trapping, the killing. There are millions of wild animals killed every year because we are not vegan and because we're consuming animal products. Look at the oceans. The oceans are being, the seabeds are being dragged, and all kinds of ocean life is being carried with it, with these nets, and all the animals contained in it, whether they're the target animal or whether they're other animals that happen to be in the way of these nets, they're all important, all morally important, and they all love life. And there's hundreds of, thousands, I think, of tons of so-called bycatch, it's called, that is caught by these fishing vessels. And those fishing vessels exist, particularly the super trawlers that everybody complains about. They exist because we are not vegan. We create demand for those animal products, whether they're from the sea or whether they're on land. We create the demand for them. But we never like to ever look at the cause. And the same when I'm speaking about this woman who's talking about the wildlife that's being killed in her area, or just wildlife killed in general. It's often due to either animal agriculture and its relation and its contribution to climate change, 51% of greenhouse gases, causing species extinction, or it's animal agriculture with farmers shooting and trapping and poisoning and killing non-humans because they consider that they're, quote, protecting their the livestock, end quote. That's one of the other reasons, and just because of inconvenience, people just think they're inconvenient if they're in the way in any way, if they're wanting to eat something from their yard, or whether they're just even breathing. It's so sad. This is how we treat 99.99% of the planet's population. We treat them as if they don't belong here, that this is not their home, and it's just this whole human supremacist attitude that we have. And of course, not happy in our own. I mean, we've created all these national boundaries that are artificial, and we, even though we all humans live on the earth, we've created artificial boundaries, and then we behave as if certain people within those artificial boundaries are more important than people in other artificial boundaries, and we like to define that by how they look, their appearance. Well, we do that, and then we vilify those that look different, and their appearance is different to us, or their culture is different to us. It's about otherizing. After we've done that, and in some cases with our governments, they do it enough so that they can then invade and bomb that country, and then take that country over and get rid of those people who we've managed to otherize to the point where they become not human. That's what we end up doing with all this otherization. And I speak about this often, the whole discrimination issue. So, and that's very sad. And then, of course, we marginalize non-human animals. We fetishize some, and we eat and wear and use others. We're constantly doing that. This is like a theme, and in our a pathology and a dysfunction with our species. And the other thing we like to do is always look for an external thing to vilify, an external cause, an external thing that we can blame for something. Like, instead of blaming ourselves for the killing of animals that in the wild, who are not domesticated, instead of blaming ourselves for that because of either animal agriculture and climate change, or animal agriculture and farmers killing animals to protect, livestock, as they say, that species is word, quote unquote, instead of, thinking like that, and realizing that we're the drivers of that, we'll blame the farmers. People in the thread I was in, they were very upset with the farmers, with the hunters. If vegan education was up front and center with large animal organizations, and there'd be probably a lot more vegans in society, and then we might be able to abolish the property status, and we wouldn't really have legal hunting. It wouldn't be legal to kill animals for food, or to use them for clothing or other reasons. They'd become moral persons. And that's why vegan education, and the ethical vegan education, not the sort of stuff that big animal organizations talk about, which is all morally inconsistent, and it's promoting happy animal slavery and all sorts of things. I'm talking about real vegan education, which it rejects the use of animals as property, period. And that includes no happy animal slavery. If large animal organizations engaged in that and were morally consistent with that, we'd probably have many vegans already, and there wouldn't be any need to be trying to, people wouldn't, trying to change laws and introduce boycotts, etc., is completely pointless while animals are legal property. It's completely pointless until animals are not legally property. And that's only going to happen when there's a majority of vegans in society. Until animals are not legally property, all this, the abominations that happen to animals every single day, whether it's all this that happens to wild animals or all, and I use that wild animals in quotes, and all the horrors that happen to domesticated animals, which is often much, much worse, and it's a regular thing and it's built into the system. And that includes the, so-called happy farms and stuff. They all end up in horrific slaughterhouses, and they have children taken away from them and everything. All of it. Mom and pop farms, industrialized farms, it's all bad. All of this would not exist if most of society was vegan. That's why vegan education is so important. But that seems to be too simple a solution for some people. Because that means also that they would have to change. We would have to change our behavior. We would have to change our behavior, and that's what I mean by it's much easier. People find it much easier, like the saying goes, and I've said it before, everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves. It's much easier to blame corporations, to blame, McDonald's and KFC and all sorts of corporations and and individuals and farmers. Blame everybody else but ourselves, that we are the drivers of speciesism, that we are the drivers of these killings and everything, because we're not vegan and because we continue to see animals as ours, that we own them. I mean, it's so sad. I mean, these little cats that are coming up every so often, these sweet little individuals that I live with, they're adopted, rescued cats. They're considered property by society. These cats are fortunate that we're vegan and we do the best we can to make their lives happy, but they're still reliant on us for food and where they sleep and when they sleep, and they're reliant on us for veterinary care, and even, when they're in terrible pain, they're reliant on us to do something about that. And, it's sort of this, they've lost all sort of independence. And that's because we've domesticated cats. We used to have a sort of a symbiotic relationship with cats. They'd come in and they saw that there was mice around people's villages, and somehow that got all messed up, and people started domesticating them, and now they're being killed by the millions in shelters. And God knows what kind of lives they're having in everybody's individual residences. Some might have reasonable lives, like our cats here. I mean, we do everything we can for them. A lot of cats would not have that. It's sort of tragic, really. It's tragic to see. I love the sweet cats that we live with, but I'm aware that, they're totally dependent on us, and how sad that is. But, the society is responsible for that. We're responsible for all of this. We're responsible for destroying their home. We're probably going to take all these animals with us when we go extinct too, from climate change, which will probably get us in 20 to 30 years. I seem to be having a lot of interruptions today. Every time I get started on this video, something happens. So I'm sorry, it probably seems a little disjointed. I hope that what I'm saying is making some sense. I might have to do this again at another time when I'm not so distracted. This is the second time now, so hopefully I'm hitting the marks that I wanted to make, the points I want to make with this. The point, I guess, that I want to make with this really is that, firstly, we're fetishizing a group of animals that some of us in other countries might actually be eating, and some of us in countries away from there fetishize and get upset about. And yet there's nothing worse about eating dogs or whales or dolphins than there is eating chickens or cows or sheep. They're all morally important, equally important, and what we think about them is irrelevant. Whether we think that animal is attractive and that animal is not, whether they're a little bit like us or they're not, whether they have similar cognitive abilities, or they're cute, or they're pretty, whatever. It's irrelevant what we think. What we think doesn't determine their moral value. What we think about them, or if they're like us, doesn't determine if they're important on this planet. They're equally morally important as we are. Our opinions of them is just our opinions. What we think doesn't make it so. I know we like to think that. We like to think that as a species, whatever we think about the planet, that we like to think we own it. We like to think we're the only species on the planet, not only the solar system, but the universe, unless you're a Trekkie and you sort of, go along with that, their premise that all species are in the galaxies are important. We happen to think that we're the only species in the whole universe, which is ridiculous. That's one thing. A lot of us behave like that. We may not necessarily think that, but some of us do think we're the only species in the universe, and we're the only ones that matter. Excuse me. And then we think that we're the only species that matter on this planet, even though there are, billions of species, and we're only much less than 1% of the actual population on the planet. And yet we think that we own everything. And the reason we think that is because we have destroyed and dominated and killed and driven out. That's why we think we're so fabulous and powerful and most important, because we can destroy and violate. And you could almost liken that to U.S. empire that has, thousands of hundreds of bases around the planet. The reason the U.S. the government thinks that they're so great and powerful, and that they're, I think it was Hillary Clinton said America is great because America is good. I mean, what the hell is that? What does that mean? But anyway, this idea of American exceptionalism, the reason the U.S. empire thinks that they're great is because they have the greatest military power on the planet, far greater than Russia or anywhere else, and therefore that makes them exceptional and incredible. And the most, the greatest country on the planet. I mean, see the comparisons. It's this sort of patriarchal, hypermasculine domination and through violence, and subjugation through violence and enslavement and whatever. This is a real problem for us as a species. We're very dysfunctional like that. I don't know why. It's always a small few who ruin it for everybody and want to dominate, and through greed and selfishness, and want to dominate and subjugate not only our own species, but we're actually, as a species, are doing it on a whole to other species. We're dominating and subjugating and destroying and killing. So we do it to our own species, and we do it to other species. So we can't even say that we do what we do to animals because we think they're lesser because they're another species, because they're not like us. We don't even have that as an excuse, because we do it to our own species, because we otherize them, they're different to us. We think they're different to us, and therefore that must mean they're lesser. So it's sad. So it turns out that we can turn on a dime with our views about wild animals and our fetishizing them. We can one year decide they're fabulous and be trying to make money off the tourism to do with them, and then the next year we consider them a pest, in quotes, a pest, and then we want to kill them. And we do that with groups of humans. A few years ago, the leaders in countries in Western countries were embracing Vladimir Putin and hanging out at G8 summits and shaking hands, and everything's hunky-dory. And now when the Western governments want to invade Russia to gain hegemony in that whole area. So now the mainstream media puts out lots of anti-Russian propaganda, which is otherizing Russians, so that we can go in and bomb them, probably nuclear warheads, bomb them, and take over that area. You see the comparisons? This is what we do. We do it in our own species with other people in other groups when it's convenient. So a few years ago, we saw Western countries saw Vladimir Putin as just like one of us. He is one of us. He's a human being. He has problems, of course. He's another oligarch who suppresses people in his own country, but the sort of anti-Russian nonsense that's going on is just complete propaganda to otherize that country and that leader, so that then we can go in and bomb that country and take them over, just like what's happening with Syria. It's what we do in our own species to other people in other artificial boundaries, what we call nations. They're artificial boundaries that we've created, which cause separation between our groups. And we do it to other animals. We decide, animals are one century animals might be something we consider animals to look at. Of course, they're all considered resources and some sort of property, but one century they might be animals to look at. The next thing we're enslaving them to, eat them or wear them or whatever. It's sort of, we're fickle, and it's really unfortunate. So wildlife is, it's just, I kind of find it sad when I see these people who get so upset about what we're doing to wild animals, animals that are not domesticated, really, really upset. And some people spend all their waking hours lobbying for laws and stuff, which is pointless, because they can come and go. Wild animals are viewed as property while society is not vegan. These laws will come and go, boycotts will come and go. It's a pointless exercise. It's pointless doing this. Vegan education would be far more important for those people to engage in. But I see the passion, the passion about this issue. And yet at the same time I see the moral compartmentalization about this issue too, that they probably, some of these people most likely are not vegan. They're still eating, wearing, and using animals that care about life and are important, morally important, as those animals that they're wringing their hands about. And I think that if we could have the right conversation with them, I could easily, if they have an open mind, I could easily convince them that all the animals, no matter where they are, no matter who they are, no matter what species, no matter how much they are like us or not like us, whether they show emotion or they don't. Fish don't show much emotion, but they have there's lots of things going on with fish, and they interact with others. There's and there's a lot of things we'll never know about them. But if only, one could. This is why vegan education is so important, because we need to highlight these moral inconsistencies so people realize that we have to stop fetishizing certain groups and start to see all animals, no matter who they are, what species, as morally important, and that all our exploitation of them, all our use of them, including the happy animal slavery, it's all wrong and it all needs to end. And so it's sad when I see these people I see them, they're vegans to be, in a way, because they just need the right conversation, and they just need to open their mind and think about what they're doing. Think and also recognize that they're participating in this awful thing that they claim that they want to try and stop. The trapping, the poisoning, the killing of those wild animals, which is often due to us not being vegan. That's, as I've explained earlier. So if only one could sort of reach them, some of these people, and tell them, please don't waste your time on laws and boycotts, etc. Excuse me. Please don't waste your time on laws and boycotts, etc. And that includes, the Humane Party, with Clifton Roberts. I mean, they seem like very nice people, but you can't abolish the property status of animals when most of society thinks that those animals are here for us to use. You can't. That's just completely back to front. You have to educate the public, get rid of speciesism, and then and get them to recognize the moral personhood of animals, which is they're moral persons. You have to get them to recognize that they should not be property. And this is through vegan education, and then, and then go from there. Until most of society is vegan, nothing is going to change for animals, whether they're in the wild. Whether they're in the wild or they're in farms, either happy animal farms, the so-called mom and pop farms, or the huge industrialized farms. Nothing is going to change for any animal anywhere. Laws and bans and boycotts will come and go while animals are viewed as property and while most of society is not vegan. So even, the Humane Party, that's all back to front. You're never going to get anybody to abolish the government, who are all comprised of non-vegans, government members, and also who are run by corporations. You're never going to get them to abolish the property status of animals, because they're not vegan. People have to acknowledge that animals are not property first. I mean, government never leads. They follow public opinion usually, although it's getting less and less like that. I mean, you only have to see, the various protests about this and that, about climate change. They don't take no notice. But I mean, they usually in the past have led. They're never leaders. They follow public opinion and do what the public is interested in. So that's why, you're never going to get a government. You're never going to abolish the property status while most of society is not vegan and thinks it's fine to use animals. And when all of government pretty much would be non-vegan as well. It's just not going to happen. So it's a waste of time. And I wish that people could see that. It's sort of, I feel like it's such a simple truth. And yet it's not, and it's such common sense, and yet common sense is not really that common, as they say. So, so there we have it. We're just going to have to, I don't know, we're just going to, those of us who are a vegan and who don't promote happy animal slavery and are not into the single issue campaigns that bring in dollars for the big animal organizations, you know, abolitionist vegans need to just keep plugging away at these points. It's so simple, you know. The simple truth is education always works. It's the thing that always turns society around, away from you know, sort of negative behaviors and stuff. Education is the key, you know. I mean, who would have thought that in the, you know, I mean, look at all the smoking even. We're just talking about smoking. So many people used to smoke, you know, from the 40s onwards. I mean, the movies, the tobacco companies used to have people smoking in those movies, you know, to promote smoking and make it cool. And then they targeted women excuse me, and targeted women and made it, you know, out, you know, this indoctrination through advertising. Excuse me. This indoctrination through advertising to make smoking cool for women and to make them feel independent by smoking. Well, this was really popular. I mean, you only have to look at old films to see how many people were smoking in those films and how many people smoked in general in society. I mean, people even used to smoke on planes. I mean, I'm old enough. I was born in 1960. Everybody smoked. People smoked right up until, you know, the mid-90s. It was still pretty popular. But I mean, people used to smoke on. I've been on many flights where, you know, people would be smoking on planes. They'd be smoking in bars. You couldn't go anywhere without there being smoke. Smoking was very popular and acceptable. You'd even see people on television, newsreaders smoking, and people interviewing other people and smoking. It's quite funny, really. When I just remember watching. I'm not old enough to have been somebody who watched Walter Cronkite, but I just remember, I think he's a newsreader from the US, and I remember he'd be sitting there smoking away, and all the newsreaders, would be reading the news with a cigarette going. But look what's happened over time. Now it's like you're like a pariah almost. There's almost nowhere where you can smoke where it's okay to smoke. I mean, I don't know why people even bother now. They're so. I mean, obviously it's a real addiction, of course, but I mean, people have to go out in the street in the cold to smoke. That's how But this is education. You know, education. There's been a concerted effort over time, education and to stamp out smoking. I mean, here in Australia, we've gone from a few decades ago to having all these pretty cigarette packets, and they were quite affordable to people, to now they're like 5 or 6 times the price, or 10 times the price, or whatever, and they have pictures of mouths full of cancer, you know. So this is what's happened over a few decades. A concerted effort. Excuse me, I'm sorry, there's a bit of smoke around today. They're burning off, as you can see in the background there. There was this concerted effort to stamp out smoking. Obviously, the taxes for cigarettes outweighed the costs of public health. And the cost to the government obviously outweighed the taxes on cigarettes, the taxes that they made from that. This is what I'm saying, and it's an exponential thing. Exponentially, veganism will take hold. Education is key. So we just have to keep plugging away at these things, but we always have to highlight the moral inconsistencies. We have to highlight the moral inconsistencies because otherwise we're never going to get anywhere. You know, we're not going to get anywhere, because they're all property. Animals are all property until that's abolished, the property status, through vegan education. Nothing will ever change for any of those animals, and the wild ones, you know, and the domesticated ones. Nothing will ever change for any of them. And there'll always be dogs and cats killed by the millions in shelters. There'll always be trapping, poisoning, and killing. And there'll always be more and more animals being killed to be mostly for food. 1 trillion aquatic and land animals every year are tortured and murdered for trivial reasons of palate pleasure, because we don't need animal products to survive. We don't need them at all. And they're killing us in the amounts we're eating them, and they're killing the environment. I won't say killing the planet, because the planet in a few million years will be populated with, when we're gone through climate change, when we go extinct, and sadly we take most species with us, it'll take a few million years, but then there'll be a whole other kind of animal population on it, but we won't be there with them, which is very fortunate for other animals, because I think we are a failed evolutionary experiment where we've gone terribly wrong. But that's the thing. So we have to, please let us stop promoting single issue campaigns. Let's stop lobbying governments and trying to change laws, and just get people to realize animals are not our resources. They're not things to use through vegan education. And I invite you to please go to howtogovegan.org and check out the many excellent, I think they're good. There's a lot of resources I've taken from other people with their permission, and I've done my own as well. And it's a vegan resource, comprehensive vegan resource in podcast form, and I invite you to please check that out. And let's go from there and try and abolish the property status of animals through vegan education. And we're not traumatizing ourselves too with all this awful stuff that's going on constantly with animals. We have to get people to, we'll start a grassroots movement where we have a grassroots movement. We'll make it grow exponentially and end speciesism and the property status of animals. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. You're watching Faint Signals from Vega. My name's Trish Roberts. Please join me next time. Subscribe to this channel, or join my Facebook page. That's at Vegan Trove Extra. I'll put the link in the information section, and you can join me on Twitter at Vegan Trove Extra. Thanks so much for listening. Till next time, take care. Bye for now.